Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting, Wednesday, the 20th of March. Welcome councillors, staff, media, and all those who are listening into the live stream. Apologies, and I have one from Councillor Todd for absence and Councillor Hooper for early departure. I'll move in a seconder for those, please. Councillor Ellis, Councillor Brahm, all in favour, please say aye. Carried. Extraordinary business. Any extraordinary business in today's agenda? I know of none. Declarations of interest on today's agenda. Confirmation of the minutes on page 3, and we're just discussion of whether the minutes are correct or not. Go through the page 3 and page 4, page 5, page 6. Moving is Councillor Cameron. Moving?
Yes, please.
Seconder, Councillor McMillan.
Second.
All those in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. And we're moving over to Methven Community Board, item number 5, and we're minutes there to receive. I'd like to receive Councillor Cameron, Councillor Lovett. All those in favour, please say aye. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to ask a question of the Methven Community Board minutes. Do we have anybody here that was... Oh, yeah.
Ask the question and we'll see.
Talking about the dumping, the rubbish dumping, and the proposal to have a curbside collection day, which I thought was quite a good idea, but it would depend on the cost. Has one of those happened in the past? In the district, anywhere?
I'm not sure if the councillor can answer that, but Mr. McCann?
Yeah, through the chair, we haven't had one of those. It's typically called an inorganic collection and was used many years ago around the councils in New Zealand, but have stopped for several years now for health and safety reasons, and also the sheer cost of undertaking the collection.
Moving on to reports. Introduction, yeah. We have, we're just waiting on Mr. Charlie Ho here. He's Chief Executive of the Civic Financial Services, and if you remember, we discussed risk pool with in a report we had at Audit and Risk. So he's his Chief Executive, so we've invited them along to have a talk to Council about what they do. Okay. And he's 2 minutes away, so we'll just wait for Councillor Cameron.
May I ask another question then on the Methven Community Board minutes?
Okay.
Talking about the footpath cleaning, we rate the businesses in Ashburton and the CBD for footpath cleaning and things. Do we do that in Methven?
Who can answer that? Neil McCann.
Through the chair, no, we don't.
So how would the community get their footpath cleaned? They'd have to go in the long-term plan. That's another question.
The question, I gather, is the ones in the town around the shops and the businesses, which in Ashburton they pay a higher rate for that level of service, but that has not been requested in Methven.
Can I make a comment, please? I think the footpaths in question were ones that weren't in the CBD. They were ones sort of around the edge of town that were just looking way back. Yeah.
Just waiting for Charlie to turn up. Welcome, Charlie. Mr. Here, take a seat and Hamish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce to Council Mr. Charlie Howe. He is the CEO of Financial Services. So they're a provider of many financial services to the local government sector, including superannuation and financial support plans and programs. And so Charlie's here to explain a little bit about Civic Financial for councillors' information, and then to answer any questions that councillors may have of Charlie. We just the right-hand button, Charlie, when you speak, and you should know the meeting is live streamed and recorded. Thank you.
Kia ora, Charlie, the floor's yours.
Yeah, kia ora Hamish, and kia ora te whānau, he mihi nui, he mihi mehana, kia ora koutou katoa, ko Ngāti Mani Poto te iwi, ko Ngāti te hine te hapu, ko Pipi te marae. I whānau mai hau I Tamaranui, ko Charlie Howe toki ingoa, kia ora huhu mai tātou. Thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak to you today. As mentioned, my name is Charlie Howe. I'm the Chief Exec for Civic Financial Services. Look, I've been doing the role for about 2 years now. My background is basically 40 years in corporate services. I just retired as the General Manager for the ANZ in Wellington about 5 years ago. Spent a couple of years in central government and have been doing this role now for 2 years. Look, Civic's been around for a long, long time. It wrote its first insurance cover in 1961 as a co-op, and then basically formed itself in local government insurances, basically doing all the underground insurance and above ground, and became the identity as Local Government Insurance Corp. And during those times, there were things that the government was doing. One of them was basically providing a discovery plan, disaster discovery plan, and I think it was in sort of the early 90s. So Civic was able to actually form what we call an entity called Local Authority Protection Plan, which Ashburton are a part of that, looking after what we call the other 40% that the councils had to come up with in a disaster when the government come up with their 60%. And then also the environment at the time in the public liability insurance space was, it's a bit what it's like today in New Zealand. Lots of the big insurance companies were pulling out. So there was a group that was really keen for the Civic at the time to form an entity to look after public liability insurance for all councils. And this basically formed RISPOL. And I'm giving you a bit of a history because I think it's important that you understand the history. And then basically the public liability space, it flowed along quite nicely. So every year, the councils who wanted to be a part of the mutual fund, so we had a trustee, it's a mutual fund, so everyone's responsible for what happens at the end of the game, and they're all paid in. So the councils every year had this basically document that if they wanted to come in and get covered every year, they would come in. So that meant that not all councils would be covered over the 20 years that RISPOL was playing out. So every year there was a fresh lot of councils that would come up. The majority of the councils were a part of RISPOL. Now, Ashburton, by memory, joined in, I think it was in July 1998, and basically remained a member until 2015. So Ashburton had been a member of RISPOL for a number of years. During that period, there would have been probably pretty close to 40 odd claims that Ashburton had put through. And of course, as a response to that, there's been some interesting scenarios from sort of cases in the legal world, which we've tried to basically give as much information as we can through correspondence comms that we've been sending out to chief execs over the last couple of years. But the whole plaintiff area in regards to weather tightness became real issues throughout New Zealand. RISPOL at the time was still covering a couple of weather tightness issues that councils were faced with, but it just got too big. The fund wasn't able to cope with that demand. And so obviously the reinsurers didn't want to be involved in that space. Now, like I mentioned, it's been going for nearly 20 odd years. and it's basically providing liability insurance is what the fund was all about. It was governed by a trust deed, which is really important by all the councils. And we formed what we called a local government mutual fund trustee company to deal with that. Rispol during that 20-year period had collected about $134 million in premiums, and we actually paid out $172 million in claims. So it served its purpose at the time. But to be quite honest with you, the litigation around the water tightness issues became a real issue, and it was very hard to actually persuade the reinsurance to be still on board. So with our members and Rispol at the time, they decided to basically close down the scheme, and that decision was made as at June 2017. Now, we were in that stage after that date of winding up Rispol, but there have been a couple of late notified claims from councils, and it's public that Napier City Council versus Rispol settlement had just taken place recently. Originally, the High Court had sided with Rispol to say that we wouldn't have to be basically settling the claim with Napier, but obviously it went to the Supreme Court and it was overruled. Hence the reason why we had to send out a call on all our members in December. There have been a couple of other late notified claims from other councils. We're at this present point in time that we're actually seeking strikeouts, going through the court system to take this to the next stage. Look, it's very complex. We have definitely got the right people involved to help us get through this. Look, I can't give you any future understanding of what the quantum might be. We haven't actually got that far yet. We're still working through the process, but we're certainly going to keep all our members informed as much as we can, which I think is really important. We've just we requested a call from members in December last year, which Ashburton were part of that process. Every council had paid that call and have paid in the past. We've made several calls in the past as well. You can imagine trying to keep this going and trying to get to an end result that the litigation world is right up there. You know, you're dealing with lawyers all the time to make sure we're doing the right thing on behalf of our members as well. But we've still got a wee way to go, but we want to make sure that you are aware that this is a legacy event. It's a mutual fund that all councils had signed up for. And when it has come to calls, the councils have stepped up. And look, we're going to try to work our way through. I feel like, particularly coming into this, the more communications we can have with councils, I think the better off we're going to be going forward. Kia ora, that's all I have. I'm open to questions if you have any questions.
Thanks, Charlie. That's a good overview of Rispol, and I'm sure there were some questions, councillors. Councillor Bryan.
Hi, Charlie. Just when you started, you said something, and I think, if I understood it, we had 40 claims in this burden.
Yep.
What did we use
They're
it
just
for?
small, they're like little small claims. I think we settled about half a dozen of those. So any claims in that personal liability space that the council may have been subject to during their membership between 98 and 2015, I can provide that information to you if you'd like to see them. But they're real. Some of them are real minor claims.
So you've got something what you can say like this is what happened.
Yeah.
It would be great.
Yeah. We've got we've got records of every claim that any council makes through that.
Okay.
Pathway. Yeah.
We can, through Mr. Mayor, we can distribute that. If Charlie's able to send that through to me, we'll distribute it to councillors.
That's fine. No problems with that.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and thank you for your explanation, because as councillors we see this money going out to Rispol and we're not a member anymore, and it takes a
totally
bit
understand.
getting our head around. So looking into the future, how much, have you got a timeline you think this may go on for, or is that in the hands of the court hierarchy as to where that may end?
Yeah, I think it's definitely in the hands of the litigators, the courts, getting actually hearings through the courts. But hopefully we can have some practical steps that we want to take going forward. We'd like to actually meet with the councils and get around a table and have a bit of a chat where this might all be going to. Yeah, but your question, Russell, is evident of a lot of other councils, and we've been explaining exactly the same thing.
Yeah, just a question myself. We've exited in 2015, so we're no longer a member, but you're still asking us for money, so I'm just struggling as to...
Yeah, that's
how
part of
that-
the mutual
how that
fund
works.
deed that you signed every year and took on place from day one when a lot of the big insurance companies left New Zealand, particularly in that public liability space. Yeah, so the mutual fund is exactly what the word is.
It just carries on.
Well, insurance, in the world of insurance, is that claims come later. So it does take time. And you can imagine if you've been through a mixed claim of water tightness and non-water tightness claims, how long these take. Yeah. And look, one of the good positive things from my perspective is the reason why I'm here today also is I've spent time this morning talking to our kaimahi of Ashburton about making sure they're ready for retirement, making sure they take full advantage of the 2 superannuation schemes that Civic offer for local government staff. And remembering that Civic's owned by the councils. We're not here to do anything absurd. We're here to help councils and staff.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Hi, Charlie. Just a question. So councils can only make late claims if they were up until 2017. Is that correct?
Yes, they could by law. The scheme allows for late claims. I mean, the issue that we've got is that there was a provision that was placed in our scheme later on because of the volume of water tightness issues that we were faced with. So the reinsurance weren't going to be hanging around in that space for too long. So we needed to actually have a provision there to stop those claims coming through. Yep.
Yeah, Hamish?
Through Mr. Mayor, just one question, Charlie. If we pulled out in 2015 and the book, if you like, was closed in 2017, if there was a claim in those that relates to something in those last couple of years, does our liability extend to after we pulled out, or?
Yeah, correct. So it's all based on a fund year, they call them. So depending on what councils were in those fund years, it's only those councils will be responsible for how they that's how we calculated the call that was made in December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions, councillors?
You know, also say I'm not an insurance expert. That's not my field of expert, but I think you asked some very valid questions, and I'm only too pleased to help answer those.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson.
Will it end? That's probably the question we're all asking ourselves.
I think so, Richard. I think it will come to an end if it from the. So let me explain to you. We have a board, a risk pool board. So we have the chief exec for Tauranga City on that board. We have a deputy chief exec for Waipau on that board. We have the CFO for Auckland City Council on that board. We have some very determined sector members to want to make sure that this actually happens. We've actually employed a very good operator that will probably look at both sides of what's the best interest, and it's always in the best interest of our members that we conduct in our business.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, all the communication that Charlie sends to council, we pass it up and pass through to the Audit and Risk Committee, which Councillor Ellis chairs. So that information is all flowing through to you via the Audit and Risk Committee as we receive it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. I think there's no more questions. Thanks for coming along, joining us, and sharing that knowledge with us and answering the questions. I think we're more satisfied or more knowledge now than what we had beforehand. So thanks very much for that, for taking the time.
I thought I might get a question about the rugby. So I won't mention that. I'll go quickly.
You were going good, Charlie. You were going good. You've ruined it.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me.
This
Cheers.
weekend could change everything.
Yeah, good.
We'll let you know Monday.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks, councillors. Next item is number 6 on this is proposed district plan change. And we have Nick, Ian and Jane. Nick and Ian, thank you. If you'd like to come forward. Anything further to add to the paper? And it's on page 10, councillors, and there's a reasonable amount of information there. Anything further to add, Nick or Ian? Questions, councillors? Any questions? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. I have a few questions, but if I can just answer one. The motivation for this review, was that because the National Policy Statement has changed with regards to the government change? Is that why we're reviewing it? No?
So it predates the current government, so it was in response to the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, which was back in 2020. Yeah.
Okay, so it's in response to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that, and was that not the change where for example, if you had a supermarket, you didn't have to have so many car parks, you know, that sort of urban infill sort of thing?
Yeah, through the chair, it removes the ability for district plans to require car parking.
Yeah, and so we're putting them back in again now, are we?
Through the chair, we're
Sorry, I should be
fixing
talking.
up unintended consequences. So we can't put car parking requirements back in the plan, but we can make sure that the rules that are left still make sense and still require car parks to be sealed, meet the design requirements, that sort of thing.
Can you repeat that, please? I missed that.
So, for example, we had rules in the plan that said only required car parking needs to meet the formation and design requirements in the plan. So that would, because there were no required car parks in the plan, they didn't have to be sealed, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ian?
And just one more point, sorry, just to further to what Nick was saying, that that there is still, it enables us to put back in accessible parking as well, which is something that is still, in certain circumstances, or consider it at least.
Just to clarify, Councillor Cameron, we're doing questions, so you can direct the question directly at the presenter. Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
It's to do with road hierarchies. Has the use of roads as diversions to State Highway 1 been considered in the road hierarchy tools? Because obviously for our district, if you go south the Ashburton River, there's only one state highway that runs that runs the whole South Island, apart from the West Coast. And we quite often get diversions. And I look at some of the roads that they're diverted on, and they're minor roads and different roads. Has there been any work done on that?
Mark?
The simple answer is no, and not necessarily for that. It would be ideal if there was some work done on the hierarchy and where detours are taken on our local roads. So we do have some discussion and agreement with NZTA. It sort of depends on where the detour is going to happen. But in terms of our own hierarchy, no, it doesn't differentiate between what's a local road for us, but then uses a detour. So there has been no work done on that.
Councillor Lovett?
Page 39, you're making provisions for adding on electric vehicles, and now we've got hydrogen vehicles out there. There's sort of no provision in the narrative there, including them. And it's so, is this a living document that'll get updated, or is this not going to come around for another few years' time to add?
So one of the Commissioner's recommendations is to amend policy 10.4F, I think it was, which recognises the positive effects of low emission transport. So that would include hydrogen.
Oh, okay, I was looking on page 38. Is it 55.6? Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Cameron?
Thank you. I want to talk about 10.4F, please, and as it relates
What
to...
page? What page?
10.4F, hold on a moment. Page 53 of the district plan, multimodal transport, as it relates...
53, was it, did you say? 51.
There's two things regarding climate change. There's a point on point 14 on page 16 with regards to climate change. and providing, amenity for people with, I'm assuming, electric cars. Is that correct? Have I understood that correct? No.
Sorry, you're referring to a policy?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
which
page
po-
14. It's very difficult when you write everything down by hand. Page 16.14, beg your pardon. Point 14, the Commission has recommended to change a policy proposed in 10F in response to submissions, the positive effects of low emission transport, which I'm assuming is electric vehicles. And I'm drawing a bow here with regards to public transport. And I'm drawing that regards when you go to 10.4F, it says multimodal transport and reducing emissions by less time spent in traffic and more efficiency. And I think they even mention public transport without flicking through the massive document. How do we implement this district plan change to what we are doing on the ground through the chair with regards to public transport or not public transport? Like, is that a factor? We're now obviously interested in public transport as a council.
Yeah, and there's some discussion of that in the reasons for rules in the plan,
Yes.
where it talks about how public transport might not be, the regional council providing a bus service, but it might be a minibus,
That's
not
right.
locally provided. Yeah. Did you have anything else, Mark, to add to that?
So this is the. Can I talk again, Neil?
Yep.
This is the plan. How do we enact the plan? How do we move the plan along to action? Or is the plan just going to be a plan until something changes?
Through the chair, so some of basically the provisions of this plan and the district plan is it's one lever to assist with these things, and it's a signal that these are directions that we're wanting to go in. It may not be the ultimate and the final decision as to how these things have happened in terms of, as you say, providing regional-based public transport or anything else, but what it does do is it signals in the district plan that where we're able to, we will consider these items and be able to factor them in decisions where there are traffic-based issues being raised. So it's, as I say, it's just one lever in the toolkit to be able to use.
So if we wanted to influence a council's climate change policy through the district plan, and we looked at the suggestions from the commissioner, less time in traffic, and I'm thinking of the Tynwald, Archibald Street, or efficient car parking, electric car parks available, then we would bring these up and discuss these. Seamus, you.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I could just make a comment, and perhaps if this is not quite right, Ian or Nick in particular, please come in. But the district plan is essentially a set of rules that guides behaviour, what you can and can't do in the district. It isn't a strategy for the council to then go and embark on a whole lot of actions.
No.
So it is a set of rules, if you like, for activity, so that those people proposing to do activity know how they might go about it. It isn't a council strategy or an action plan in the sense of other documents that you see.
Okay.
So when you say how do we enact it, well, once this is passed, it sits there as the guiding document for people to take note of as they propose their activity. It isn't then for us to launch into a whole lot of activity because we've done something.
And
with
we
the
could then
district plan.
support it through the district plan.
Well, the district plan then sits there as a defining guideline,
Okay.
and I've always understood, and it makes sense to me, that the community then would have right to regard the council as the champion of the plan, so that when we get a proposal to do something, we would support or seek to amend that proposal via the resource consent process in accordance with the district plan, and we are the champions of the plan, but it doesn't generate us with a whole lot of proactive activity. I hope that's broadly
Yeah, I
right.
understand.
Yeah.
Councillor Lovett?
It's on page 70 to do with allotments on laneways. In the district plan, it kind of reads here, you're only allowing 6 residential allotments on a laneway, and I'm wondering, is it going to stifle future developments or adding more houses if the sections are big enough to be developed? it's a technical legality there, that someone who lives on there and wants to subdivide, they've got to go through that whole process, changing a laneway to make it into a street. I'm wondering, is that going to stifle future infill housing?
Through the chair, there's two parts to that. I think the first part is that it's not actually part of the plan change. It's an existing provision in the plan, and I guess I'd ask the mayor, would you like me to explain how we consider those things?
Ken, if you wish.
Yeah, okay. So effectively, you're quite correct that the provision of a maximum of 6 allotments on a right-of-way is there to limit the amount of intensification you can have, and if it goes more than 6 allotments, then we require it to be a road, and the road generally is of a much higher standard and wider than a right-of-way. So the council is quite correct in the sense that if a lot is subdividable, or potentially could be more intensively used, and there are 6 units or 6 allotments coming off that right of way, then potentially that can hamstring future development. So when we're getting applications in and we're considering them, that is one of the considerations we have, and it's certainly something at pre-application stage and even at application stage we will voice to applicants and say to them, look, if you're proposing this, now is the time to actually anticipate future development, because if you don't, then there will likely be limitations in the future, or at least be a lot harder to do. So yes, it is an issue.
Okay, I just had another question, quick note there. We're talking about visual distractions, and that's page 46, I think, was again on 75, and we talk about hedges. Talk about trees, sorry, and I know hedges are becoming a huge problem on intersections and that, and I wonder whether the word hedges should be put in there beside with trees.
Through the chair, once again, that's not part of this plan change today, so it's not something we can change now, but it's certainly something, if we were to review that section, then it is certainly something we could consider including. Yeah.
One more question, if I may, Neil, please.
Councillor Kebba.
Reasons for rules, the bold underlined, is that the revision? Yeah. So if we go to 10.12, and it's in Appendix 2 on Stella, page 54, reasons for rules, 10.6.1 is the heading. Parking and loading space requirements and design. They're talking about off-street cycle parking. Is that if any change happens in the town, or what? Where would you apply that rule?
Through the chair, the plan change proposes to require cycle parking for long-term cycle parking, or for staff, basically, in the town, in that Ashburton Business A zone, but not for visitors, with the idea that would be provided, for on-street or public cycle parking.
And that's not required. That's not required to be covered. That, like the on-street provision of cycle parking, is provided by whom?
So that'll be left to the council to provide. Yeah, in accordance with whatever standards are, in the council standards.
So if I was building a new farmer's building or whatever in town, and I had 100 employees, I would have to provide as part of my building covered cycle place for people to put their bikes. Is that right? Staff, yeah, staff. Okay.
Just to add, sorry, through the chair, that the part of the thinking was that through the council CBD regeneration, that there were a significant number of visitor parking, cycle parking spaces provided at various points, and that they would provide that short-term parking solution in the business A zone specifically.
So the ones you've got at the front, down by Kelly's and things, those.
Yeah, amongst others, yes.
Yeah.
Further questions?
Just one.
Councillor Wilson.
It's further around the road hierarchy. I'm just trying to really understand it, so that once the road hierarchy is set here, this plan has to be changed effectively the way we're doing it now to change that hierarchy. And so then from the hierarchy, does that then fall into the the RAMS report and how we maintain our roads from priorities and that sort of stuff? Is that how it works?
Yes, essentially. The problem with hierarchies is they've got district plan one. We've also got other hierarchies for roading and things like that. The one network framework and the roading classification. So they all don't quite align. It'd be nice if they all did. So hierarchy is always a wee bit different. So yes, in terms of maintaining the network, it's not what the district plan hierarchy says. It is what we've got for our roading hierarchy in terms of the classifications. They aren't that dissimilar, but there's some different terminology and things like that. So, and there's different reasons why you have them as one thing or another within the hierarchy. So, there's a bit of work to actually align those better. But if it needs to be changed in district plan, I'm assuming that yes, it would have to come back and it would be a change would have to be come to council saying we want to change the hierarchy. So, yeah.
No further questions? Okay, a recommendation in front of you. Someone like to sponsor that? Councillor Ellis?
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cameron? Did you want to speak to it? Speakers for or against the recommendation? There being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Next item is page 7, adopting of the long-term plan, page 157. Femke, who have we got? Mark, Tony. Anything further? Just been advised that Appendix 6 has been circulated to you separately, wasn't included in the pack, so you now have that circulated separately. Anything further to add to this rather large document that you've been working on for quite some time to get to this point of for getting it ready to go to consultation? Anything further to add, Mark?
No, just I guess really this obviously represents this, and the next report represents the culmination of over a year's work in terms of pulling all this information together and setting the direction of the district for the next 10 years. So all of the information in the first report is really the supporting information behind the LTP. So the financial strategy, the infrastructure strategy, what we call the activity statements, the fees and charges, the broader financial information in terms of our statements and the significant assumptions. You would have had all the policies, LTP policies that have been presented to you previously and adopted for consultation. So we haven't included those as part of the pack, but you have seen them and adopted them. Obviously, all of this information is draft and will be available publicly as part of that process. And as part of this process, we've also just included, we've done a bit of a project over the last year, just looking at the rating system and maps, and just making sure that things align. So you'll see that there's a few maps in there that we sort of thought deserved a bit more public notice in terms of the changes applied to those. So we will sort of specifically consult with properties affected there. And as you rightly pointed out, the wrong document was uploaded to Stella, so that's been given to you today. The other thing that we have noted is that on page 387 of the agenda, which is the fees for development contributions, we haven't updated that table correctly. So we just seek your leave to update that correctly before it goes out. That's all from me for now.
Good, thanks, Mark. We'll go to questions, and I'll start with one on page 164. There's a map there, and we talk about Rakaia waste collection. The map above it is not Rakaia. The next page is, or is it just the way they format it?
Sorry, I'll get Richard to answer that.
Your observation is completely correct. In this report, the text explaining the change precedes the map, and the size of the maps has meant that we've ended up with the map relating to the prior explanation on the same page as the next.
So it's just formatting.
It's just, a
Yeah,
formatting
no, that's fine.
aspect.
Yeah.
So that on page 162, it talks about the Methven amenities rate, and then the map of that is on page 163.
Yeah. So then my question relates to the same page, Rakaia Waste Collection, and we have a map there of the collection being extended, which is an increased level of service. We consulted on this some years ago, 2 or 3, and was turned down. Yet it's back here, but we haven't discussed it at our workshops, I don't believe. Why is it here again when it was turned down the first time?
My understanding is that what happened, it was 3 years ago, I believe, that we consulted on a change in this general area. At that point, there were about 5 properties involved. There are now 16, and we've been approached by a number of the property owners asking for the service to be introduced, and so that's the reason why it's back. We've been working on these maps. Well, the group that started this work started well over a year ago. Some of these maps were still being discussed only about 10 days ago, which is why it hasn't previously been in front of council.
I struggle with it being here. We haven't discussed it. We didn't know about it. 3 years ago it was there and turned down. There are more properties there, I know. If we'd had an opportunity to discuss around this table, knowing the area very well and knowing who would be submitting against this, we could have shortened the area up to a more appropriate area and it would possibly go through. But now it's got to go through there'll be submissions, I'm sure. We could have done it simpler by alerting us to the fact. I thought we should have known all that was going into this plan. This is a new thing, I think. I don't recall it being discussed. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I've got a question on fees and charges. And my first one's on page 404 under parking, and I'm just checking that the Cass Street car park pay and display meter is actually $3 per day. Is that correct? Seems very cheap for a whole day car park.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
That is correct.
That fee is discussed with Eastfields.
Thank you. My next question, if that's okay, is on page 409 under the squad prices. And it has a note there saying fees and it's not written correctly. Fees are currently subject to further discussions with users and may change prior to the adoption of the long-term plan, but I'm guessing that wording wouldn't be there because when we adopt the long-term plan, that's when the fees would go through. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, yes, we're currently reviewing the pricing and the structure and council's involvement in terms of our squad swimming activity. So this the pricing that is included is if no changes happen, but there will be a report to council between now and the adoption of the plan that would have our recommendation as to what changes we envisage or we sort of land on. So it's sort of a placeholder fees and charges. If nothing changes, that's what it will be. If something changes in the middle with council's input and approval, then those numbers wouldn't be accurate.
Thank you. And I've just got one last question on fees and charges, which is on page 412 under events. This is a new fee. I'm not sure this was in our workshop, so I don't recall it. I just see the community and non-for-profit events. I can just see that $75, while it may seem quite low, if you're running quite a small event, that could be a big chunk of what you have in the kitty. And just speaking from experience, with putting an event application in recently. So, yeah, I hadn't seen any of those event fees before in workshop time.
Joe?
I would need to check with Simon Worthington, but I don't think the intention was to charge for the not-for-profit ones. It's got community and not-for-profit up the top, so you think that applies to all of the ones underneath? Yes. Okay. One thing Simon has discussed is the amount of time that's spent going back and back and back, and he wanted the ability to be able to charge for that. I also understand these fees are very low compared to a lot of other councils that charge for events, but it is still all subject to consultation, so.
Councillor Cameron?
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. Right at the beginning of the document, page 173 on Stella, or page 4, what we're aiming for, the financial target or goals or limitations, is we've got the rates revenue is budgeted to contribute 52% of total income in 24-25, increasing to 62% in year 10. Then we go to liabilities, and they're targeted or forecast to be 168 million in 2023, but there's no year 10. I wonder if that would complete the story. So they could see the growth versus the income, versus the outgoing. I just thought that might be useful.
Through the chair, we can look at that quite happily. That wouldn't be hard to add.
Okay, thank you. I just thought that might just make a clear picture. And may I make one more comment, Neil?
Yep.
When you look at affordability, just help me understand the graph. Ashburton District, it's fourth most affordable or whatever on the same page, right, on the bar graph.
Yeah.
Affordability is the average rates 23-24 as the percentage of mean household income. So is that telling you approximately that Ashburton pay 3% of the mean household income? So say our average rates are $3,000, the mean household income is $100,000 in the district. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So our mean household income is, what's the average rate in our district?
This is a simple divisor, so you've got to be really careful to try and work it backwards and then calculate people's income.
Well, there must be a mean. Presumably, there's a mean. I mean, I wondered if that could be clearer, so people could work that, see what that is. The mean income in our district is 54,000 or 68,000 or whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
Yes, and we have.
There'll be a table somewhere.
There is. It says here the Infometrics regional profile. So whatever that said is the mean income, we've just divided that by the number of
the average rate.
That's right.
So then I'd put a hyperlink through to the Infometrics or something so that people can see that, and it just might make more meaningful. Might be more meaningful to people if they can work that out.
Yep, that's correct. We can put a hyperlink into that data, no problem.
Thank you. Russell, Kinsalis?
Thank you. Also, fees and charges, page 402. If you spend a night in the Ashburton Holiday Park on a powered site, it's going to cost you $30. And you go down the road to the Rangitata camping ground and go to a powered site, it's only $14. Seems to be a large discrepancy for the same service.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess the reality is they're two very different campgrounds, and you do receive two very different levels of service between Rangitata to the Timberwood Holiday Park, or the Ashburton Holiday Park and the Timberwood Domain, hence the difference in the pricing.
Councillor Wilson.
Page 221, 221, Ocean Farm upgrade. We recently visited the Ocean Farm and had a look, and it's probably the first time I've had a chance to have a look, and we haven't really, the council hasn't delved into options going forward and what we can do, but there's some quite specific options being put out here, and I'm just wondering how the two link together. The option, like one of replace current irrigation with subsurface irrigation, well, that hasn't been discussed here, but it's been put in as an option, so I'm just concerned, how do we get from just having seen it to some specific instances. Page 222, that's on.
I mean, the infrastructure strategy sort of presents the options. We have, council obviously at this stage has not committed to any particular option. So at this stage, we're presenting the options that we have information about and we think could be used. This infrastructure strategy obviously will be reviewed in 3 years' time, and we'll have better information and more information about what that might look like. So that'll be an ongoing conversation going forward.
And another question on page 247. It's regarding the Montalto water supply. I know we've been in ongoing discussions with the good people of Montalto and their water supply and how it services them, having been a stock water system, having transitioned over time to a de facto house supply, non-compliant house supply to that matter. But I see we've got in there the $3.8 million, 3.472 million in year 4 to 10. How will we get to that point? Because once it's in the long-term plan, it tends to be put out there. You know, will the community be involved at all levels to ensure that they agree with that outcome?
Thank you, through the chair. It's a really on-point question, and it brings us back to the very heart of our 10-year plan. It's developed at a certain point in time with the best information that we have with what we know right now. We know that we are likely to have to do something with Montalto, but what that might end up being, we don't know. But we do have the beauty of the annual plan in the interim. So when we get closer to the time of having to make that decision and commit the funding, we will be able to have a really clear plan and a lockdown conversation with the community at that stage. We, as a council, it would be remiss of us to know about the problem but not include any funding, knowing that the timing was coming when we had to do something. So, yes.
Just further to Tony's answer, Councillor, there's two other things I could perhaps comment on. One, we won't necessarily be able to agree with everyone in that supply as to what the solution is. In the end, we will involve them and consult and listen. But I imagine there are a range of views, and so agreement might be a difficult word to use. But secondly, the Minister of Local Government is quite specifically thinking about small rural water supplies that were principally established as stock water, but which have a number of connections for domestic use. And there was a webinar, I think it was, that we attended recently that the Minister spoke, and he specifically talked about reviewing what the requirements should be for such schemes. And so the rules around a compliant supply for the likes of Montalto may yet change in the coming year or two. And so what ultimately needs to be done in Montalto is not yet 100% clear, because the Minister is certainly reflecting on the potential for change. So that's another factor for us to keep in front of.
Councillor Lovett.
Going back to Ocean View Farm on page 222, looking at number 2 there, I'm really disappointed we haven't got a price in there of a costing for the electoral system or pivots. I mean, Canterbury's the home of irrigation, and there's plenty of expertise out there putting these systems on dairy farms for the effluent, and we can save $3 million approximately on these drip feeds and the system we already have out there. And I'm disappointed we haven't got a price or some narrative in there about that, because after being out there looking at it, I think there is some big decisions in this space, and it should have been a costing put in there, I feel. I don't know why there hasn't been.
Thank you.
The question is, why is the costings not there?
Yeah, why is it?
Costing's not there due to timing. I think you need to remember the infrastructure strategy is quite different to the 10-year plan because it is a 30-year plan, and the decision isn't needed by council until 2026. So we have to have something in there to say there is a big decision coming, and we think it could be quite a pricey decision. But until the team get the space to better go and do the work, that's where we're at this point in time, unfortunately.
Because we've got $3 million in the other two, and I'm just wondering, you've obviously done that. and why haven't you done this one? Because you could ask any irrigation firm in town, and knowing the length and what they could give you, kind of a scenario for there.
As we progress, it'll be developed up into a plan and a way forward to address what we need to do down there to be compliant. So that will come.
That
Sure.
will come.
Just a wee bit early yet. Councillor Wilson.
Oh, can I just?
Oh, one more. Sorry,
I
one
just
more.
got one
Councillor.
more question about Ashburton Airport. I'm just wondering
Page.
whether we could have
Which page are you
oh,
on?
sorry, page 407 on the fees and charges. Whether there could be a bit of a narrative in there, special rate for encouraging an event, especially after this weekend this last week we've had a major event out at the airport, and it would be nice to have a wee comment there, because anyone looking at what we're charging per landing and stuff might put them off. And if there's just a wee narrative about holding an event out there, because we want to encourage this for the future, because we have done in other areas.
And the airport could, or whoever wants to can submit on that. Leanne?
Yeah.
So for any event that is held at the airport, we do get that, we get approached through that collective group of what's going on. So we can look at an event booking as separate to what this is about. So we could put an asterisk in there. And
Mr Mayor, just if I could add to that, if the successful event was held under this fees and charges regime, it didn't seem to be an impediment to the running of the event. So I'm not sure what charges were made for that event, whether we strictly did this or whether there was some concessions made. If there were concessions, then they should be reflected in the fees and charges policy. But if they paid as per that schedule and the event was very successful and didn't cause any grief, then you perhaps need to consider whether it's actually needed.
We will be getting submissions from the airport users, I'm sure. So we'll have another discussion on where we land. Councillor Wilson.
Page 309. We have $100,000 allocated to, I think I'll just find local pools. I think it is. Does that include the Timor pool, or is it just the pools around the wider community?
Thank you. Through the chair, that just includes the pool around the wider community. It doesn't include the Tinmore pool.
Does not include the Timor pool. No. Correct.
Page 429. It's the comments around NZTA's funding of roading and how much of that pie we get. It says here that they will occur within the LTP cycle. We consider this as extremely unlikely that the fare will increase or decrease. When will we know that, and how significant is that to our budgeting and our financial roading stuff?
The fare rate was just recently re-examined, and we were confirmed at the current rate. In fact, I think the last at least 2 reviews that I'm familiar with have confirmed the fare rate of 51. I think there's a very safe assumption that our fare rate won't be increased any time soon. So there'll no doubt be other reviews periodically, but we've been 51 for a very long time, and if memory serves me right, there is no lower number. Is that correct, Mr McKean? I think 51 is the minimum any council can get. So for all the reasons that we're at the minimum now, is likely to continue into the future. Very safe assumption.
Another question around the general rate. If I look at the split of our rates, how they're being applied across the whole district, and the general rate reduces as a proportion quite a bit this year, and I understand it's because we've used our investments and the wise investments of the community over time to reduce that general rate. Do we feel that can continue into the future, or is that factored in, and how is that going? Because that actually affects the rates quite significantly in the current year, because we look at some rates nearly go down because we've reduced the general rate so much. Leanne?
through the chair, that will be a decision pretty much every annual plan. We've estimated this out for the 10 years, and it has been on a declining assumption around using different reserves, but assuming that we will continue to use dividends we earn from our investment activities. But it is a topic we'll bring to you every annual plan.
Thank you. Just my topic before, which is on page 165, the map for Rakaia waste collection. Because we haven't discussed it here before, I'm proposing that we move the line to 1 kilometre out of Rakaia, which will capture all those subdivisions that have happened, who require and want the waste collection, and those below that who don't want it, who are still farming and don't require a council provided rubber collection, will appease them, and I think you'll probably get no submissions on it and get agreement if that line was moved to 1 kilometre out of Rakaia, which is basically to the edge of the sewage farm. Happy to change.
End of the day, it's your decision. You direct us as you see fit.
Okay, so just to tidy that little piece up, I'll move that we move that line to 1 kilometre, or to where the bottom of the sewage farm is on the map here, and we go out consultation on that. Have a second for that? Councillor Cameron, discussion. Councillor Ellis, Councillor Wilson, if you just go off, or Councillor Ellis comes on. Or Councillor Cameron, you want to talk to it?
No, I was going to, but that's it.
Oh, you come back to it. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I'm just trying to see the lines on the map because that land has been subdivided for so far. So this map goes past where that's been subdivided down there, does it?
Yeah. That line would take it right to the edge of the subdivision that's happened in the last 4 or 5 years.
The new line.
The new line would, yeah. Councillor Cameron?
I was just going to say, I remember the original consultation and we got a lot of opposition from some people in Rakaia when we said we were going to impose the collection, council collection on them.
Yeah. So moving that line, further discussion? Right of reply, removing that line will appease everyone, I think. Put the motion, all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Page 441. I know the next item on the agenda is the consultation options, but we have a EA Network Centre. We have 3 million budget across years 1 and 2 of this plan for the new outdoor swimming pool and EA at EA Network Centre. How certain are we around that budget? Because obviously it's in year 1 and 2, so we, because it's in the budget, so it's understand the certainty of that money and the spend and what.
Sarah?
Through the chair, with regards to the pool projects, outdoor pool at EA Network Centre and or Tynwald pool, we've had QS costings on the designs based on repairing the Tynwald pool to New Zealand standards. So that's that. With the other projects, they are sort of a project that can be completed within an envelope of money, especially the Domain paddling pool, for example, and the splash deck. If we had that envelope of money, the features would be falling within that value. So we do feel confident with that. The Hydroslide option also has a slightly different funding mechanism that if council wished to go down as sort of a joint venture project, so and that involves us doing the capital, but some of the associated costs and the tube slides themselves could be done by a third party. So we're confident on the pricing for the 2 key options, and the other projects, due to different mechanisms, can fit within that envelope also.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Through the chair, page 166, and it's the map of the Mount Somers water supply. So, just so I can get this clear, you're reducing the size of it because some of the properties weren't using the water supply, and there's 4 additional properties that have come inside, so I'm guessing they're in that sort of little triangle shape on the right hand side where you've got the black line, and then there's sort of it's not a triangle, it's one of those.
Yes, that's correct. It's a little wee sort of dog leg up the top and the white line showing.
So that's where those extra 4 properties are included
and they
in there.
actually already are connected to the supply. The map just wasn't reflecting that correctly.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Richard?
In regard to the balance of the black areas, it's not, they're not using the water, we can't get water to that land, full stop.
Councillor Mickle?
Thank you. Just the future of stock water races, page 278. We've proposed that we'll stop providing stock water by the 1st of July 2027. And you've got natural water courses and spring-fed ones, or those that have community or ecological benefit. Have those, or would any of those be supplied by the water races that require a fish screen? If so, we've got also on the next page down that there are no capital works or capital renewals in the program. Have we identified if any of those need fish screens?
Thank you, through the chair. The intention is that no, they wouldn't be needing fish screens. The work that needs to happen from the 1st of July, should this proposal become what's locked into the LTP, is actually looking around and actually going through and identifying every single race and understanding the benefits or ecological or cultural benefits that may exist with those rates as to whether they stay as a natural water course or can actually be completely closed down. So there's a lot of work to go, but the intention is that no fish screen required water would be used to keep these running.
That's apart from the natural and the spring fed. I mean, ones that are coming off the scale.
The ones that are coming off the hills that at the moment, if we stay as we are currently providing the service, will require a fish screen at some point in time. They're not being considered to be long term for these, so we aren't requiring fish screens, so we aren't budgeting for that fish screen investment.
If I may just follow that comment, that is our fervent hope. But we, however, are not the decider of whether it needs a fish screen or not, and so you can inevitably contemplate conversations with ECAN around the requirement for fish screens. So the actual outcome is not certain.
Councillor Wilson?
I'm just trying to find the pages on. It's regarding the potential of the Hines having to go to a piped sewage scheme. I see it's mentioned out further in the thing. What would trigger that having to happen?
And Mr. McKeon?
Here we go, page 216. Right, other villages such as Hines may need to be serviced in the longer term, although there's no direct imperative for that at present. What would trigger that to have to happen?
Through the chair, it could be assessment of effects of the current disposal options going forward. That something could come out of that in the future, or just a request from people from public consultation if they would want to join the system.
And again, through you, Mr. Mayor, the regulator, Te Matarawai, ECAN may at some point have rules and guidelines that would require those smaller communities to have a wastewater system. And if you recall, some of the discussion around the Three Water Reform program was the big change needed in New Zealand around Three Waters service delivery is likely to be in wastewater, despite the heavy focus thus far on drinking water. Wastewater may well be the service that is going to require the biggest investment over the next 30 or 40 years.
No further questions. We have the adoption of the long-term plan with supporting information there, and there's a recommendation there that Council adopts the long-term plan 2024 to 34 with supporting information for consultation. Point 2, that Council approves the rating maps revisions as outlined for consultation, and I will move. Who's seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Lover, thank
I'll
you.
second that.
And I'll speak to the motion that this is a chance to set direction for the next 10 years, 3 years in detail. This is the first draft we're putting out to the community and see what the community thinks. Have we got it right? We need to hear from the public, and hence this consultation document will go out shortly. This LTP year 1 focuses on core business, and I'll talk about the 3 I's that causing is the increases in costs. insurance, inflation and interest. And roads, in the last 3 years, roading costs have gone up 27%. Bridge costs have gone up 38% in 3 years, huge increases, way above the rate of inflation. And we all see this in our daily lives. When we go to the supermarket, we see increased costs, but there's no more in the supermarket trolley. What we also need to look at as a country is what I call the E, and it's efficiency. We need to take that into the equation. An efficiency definition is achieves maximum productivity with minimum expense. We've lost this over the last number of years as a country, and we need to take this on board. We've got 5 for our future, focusing on 5 items in this long-term plan, which we'll consult on in more detail, but the whole plan is up for consultation. We welcome people's submissions with comments on how we could do things differently if need be. So if someone wants to submit that they don't like something, give us an alternative, give us another suggestion, and we can really have some meaningful discussion. So speakers for or against the document. Councillor Lovett.
I just speak in favour of it. We've, the staff and councillors have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort putting this together and a lot of thought and, worried about it. And I think we've done our best, and I look forward to seeing what our submissions come back and have a read of and see what is important in our district to people.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I also support this. There's been a lot of work go into it, and we have quite a lot of work coming up in front of us with our consultation period. We're doing it quite differently to any other way that I have done it before this time, where we're going to the people, if you like, instead of asking them to come to us. And I'm excited by that prospect and look forward to meeting lots of people along the way and getting their comments, and look forward to their feedback on the plan.
Councillor Wilson.
So I again speak in favour of it, and I think we've got the balance reasonably right between the unique differences in our community between urban and rural, and the huge extra cost that's been put on the council through increases in performance of water and sewage and wastewater. So I think people need to look through the headline number and see that some parts of the community are having to pay more for their services, but that doesn't mean that especially the rural community, aren't having to pay more as well elsewhere, because anybody who's not attached to the local water supply or the sewage is still faced with the same costs as we are, but coming from a different pot of money. So when you submit, look through the numbers and see actually where the costs are falling, rather than just the general overall cost.
Further speakers for or against?
I'd like to speak in favour, and I implore those people on social media who say council don't listen to have their say officially.
The mover does not require a right of reply. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Hamish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to take the opportunity in this sort of public forum to thank the staff who have been so involved in getting the plan to this stage. There have been a lot of people involved, but particularly to our strategy and policy team, many of whom are here, and also the finance team, some of whom aren't here, have done an awful lot of work. The activity managers, of course, as well. And it is a very satisfying thing to have you adopt the draft plan for consultation. We too are looking forward to the feedback from the community, and it'll be a really interesting couple of months now as we finalise the plan. But just a big thank you on behalf of council for all the effort that's gone into getting it to this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Hamish, and I'll also echo those comments too on behalf of councillors for all the work that's gone into it. It's a big job, and we all know that, and we're probably halfway or perhaps slightly over, but there's still more work to do till we adopt the final on June the 26th, I think. Yep, which we'll meet that deadline. So great. Next item, number 8, is the adoption of the long-term plan 2434 consultation document. Page 448. Anything further to add? Tony?
Thank you, through the chair. What I've just popped up on the screen there is the branding that's going alongside the consultation material for this consultation document. What you're adopting today is the words, and it is a very crude, we think it looks great, but it's probably pretty dull and boring to the average person to read and enjoy. So this is just to show you how the branding is shaping up. We always get caught in this tricky position of finalising the words and getting them adopted by yourselves as the elected members to make sure this is how you want to have the conversations with the community, and that collides at about the same time as we're trying to lay out and do design. So this is why we get you to adopt the words themselves, and then we just take that through the final design process. So Mark, I might just get you to flick on to one further page on that presentation. This is just an example of what the material is starting to shape up and look like in the document itself. Lots more pictures this year, good graphics, and hopefully make it an enjoyable read for our community.
Questions? As Russell said, he's looking forward to the consultation, the new way of doing it. Us going out to the community, and we want to hear, so we think we've got it right, but then we may not, but there's also some options there for people to look at as well, and need a preference on what people think is the best option. If there's no questions, could I have a mover that council adopts the adoption of the long-term plan consultation document? Councillor Cameron?
Yep, thank you. Would you like me to read it out, or you?
You read it out, please.
The council adopts a long-term plan 2024 to 34 consultation document and undertakes consultation with the community from the 27th of March to the 28th of April 2024.
Moved Councillor Cameron, seconded Councillor Ellis. Any speakers for or against? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion, and I'd just like to say that I liked the way that we did our pre-engagement this year, the Take 10 for our future. I think we had a good response to the 4 workshops that we held, and I'm really pleased to see that information has been included in the It's Our Place website. So, yeah, it's great.
Councillor Wilson.
I speak in favour, but I want to implore the public to understand that it's not a case of all these are going to be done. You do have the option to say no to some of these in there as well. So there is the option of saying no to some as well. You don't have, it's not just a fait accompli. There is the option of no. And when we say no, the money is not spent. It's actually kept for a rainy day, kept for the council. Once it hasn't spent it, it still has that option to spend it in the future. But once you've spent it, it's spent, and it's on your debt, effectively.
Thank you. No further speakers for or against. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Again, unanimously. Thank you. Next item is the 9, adoption of the biodiversity strategy. Welcome, Femke, Christian, and Tony, is it? Ian. Questions or anything further to add to the strategy, the report? Ian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we would just like to present the strategy as it is in your agenda, and happy to take questions.
Questions, councillors? Yeah. Councillor Lovett.
It is a living document, isn't it? It's going to be updated as we go along. It's not going to be set on a shelf like the one a few years ago, just sat there and it never got dusted off.
Yes, through the chair, this will be a living document and it will have the ongoing updates. And it's also got a 1-year review clause to take cognizance of anything that happens in the immediate future.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Can you, obviously, it's been in the news very recently with the new government coming in, talking about getting rid of SNAs, but not actually having done anything about it yet. but they've indicated they will be doing something. I understand that SNAs are still in the law. How does that fall in? What have you done in this, to encompass that, perhaps that future change that's coming? Because I'm referring to page number 21 of the plan, which is page 538. Option 1.1, it says complete assessment of the district's ecological values, including significant areas, SNAs. And we've got it a medium term and long term, but down further it says we're going to start immediately on it.
Through the chair, we understand the Beehive release last week regarding the SNA to be suspended for 3 years pending RMA reform. And we sort of have worded that action itself because the SNA is only a component of an ecological values. Everything outside, everything within the water and around the water bodies are also part of ecological values, but they are not within the SNA. So what our plan is to revisit the review of the strategy after 1 year. By then we must have learned more from the national, from the central government on what to do with the SNA going forward. I believe that they're about to give us more insight from the Minister of Environment on what to do pending the Beehive release last week.
Probably, but we have written in page 1.1, it says complete assessments, because I'm thinking of a lot of the people in the, especially in the upper plains and the high country, because it's SNA is quite a overreaching thing. It means you cannot do anything to that land which could affect biodiversity, or which includes plants, animals, and everything. So it's quite a wide-reaching thing, and I would have thought we're better to not say not do it, but put it on hold because we have time to do it. And I think we've got down there 5 years from August 2023. Whether we could push that out a year, which would allow us to indicate to those people that we are taking into consideration what the current government does. So when we approach them and do it, we're not pushing back against, it should be a relationship between the landowners and us, not a fight to the end as it was.
Yes, through the chair, you're right. The time frame there is medium term, which is defined as 3 to 10 years. But we are not going to do anything in the next 3 years regarding SNA until we hear more. And that's why we've made it to be a medium term. So 5 to 10 years from now should be, 3 years should be 2027, and then by 2028, we'll revisit that again and see if it will be achievable. But because it's still within the MPSIB, it will be worth returning it on the strategy, and then we'll look at it in the future again. Thanks.
And in the next page, the Regional Planning Committee on top of page 539. Who is the Regional Planning Committee? Prepare a plan for changes to protect SNA and recognise land covenants, plan resource, medium long term, us and the Regional Planning Committee. Who is the Regional Planning Committee?
Through the chair, when we did this whole column, there was anticipation that the National and Built Environmental Bill Act will not be repealed, and we made it a regional planning committee in case if the MBE law persists, and then it goes back to ADC since it's been repealed. So we're going to delete the regional planning committee from that column. Yep.
And one other question. 2.1, page 541. I was recently at a Canterbury Champions Biodiversity Group, which is an ECAN group, which all the district councils and all the experts are at. And they talked about, was talk around the 10%, and I brought up that our district is quite unique in that we have highly modified plains with low cover and high country with higher cover. And I was asking, how do we get to a point where we understand what that number is? Because here it could be 20% in the hill and 1% on the plains. And they suggested that the direction should come up from the bottom, which is up from us. So I thought here was an option for us to perhaps put some, have a think about it and gain agreement again and put some numbers in that actually could be drawn up, because the plains is never going to be 10%. It'll just never happen, because it won't ever happen. And to put some numbers to direct ECAN rather than just accept what they say, because they'd love 10%. across the plains, but it's not going to happen. So I'm just, if we can put some numbers or a way around that.
Hamish?
Oh, sorry, I was going to come back to these.
Okay, Christian, answer that question, thank you. Or was it a comment or a question, the 10%? We don't want to get ahead of the law. That's one thing we don't want to
Yes, through the chair, the 10% is actually lifted from NPSIB. It gave a minimum of 10%, of which any regional council can go above that. But I do believe that ICANN will want us to remain at 10%, which has been provided by the NPSIB. But we cannot decide to stay at 10% without going further than that and see if we can be able to achieve that. I know it will be difficult to achieve on the plane.
Thank you, Hamish.
Thank you. Mr. I just wanted to return to the SNAs, and I think I heard complete agreement with Councillor Wilson's point from the way Christian responded to the issue around the time frame. But I wonder whether we need to do a little more work on the wording to make sure that both the concern that was raised and the agreement that we were going to wait. We just need to think about how we're actually phrasing that in the plan, and if different people were looking at this plan and they saw the words here, whether that actually reflects the intent, for example, to not do anything for 3 years, or to wait for further information from the Minister, or to understand the future reform better, whether we shouldn't be trying to capture that rather than just kind of agreeing that we agree, but the wording not necessarily precisely reflecting that. So,
how do we achieve that today, now, or can we?
Well, I'd like to propose that we do have another go at the actual wording to reflect the agreement around the changed landscape of SNAs, and if you can either trust us to get that right, or you can ask us to bring it back for confirmation. But I'm just not sure that the understanding that I heard is completely reflected in the wording, and that in the end the wording is possibly going to mean something to other people that it doesn't actually mean to us. My preference, I suppose, Mr. Mayor, would be that you would allow us to rewrite that with the intent that was clearly expressed, and we'll go away and do that.
I'm just struggling with, if you rewrite it, we haven't, it's after we've adopted it. I think you should rewrite it and then bring it back. It won't take long to bring back, but this is not
just that one little piece. I'm not trying to hold up the adoption of the strategy at all, but I'm just not sure that what I heard is exactly reflected in these words.
that one piece, but after we've done some more questions, there may be something else that needs changing, perhaps.
Yeah,
Don't know.
that's true.
But we'll park that. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. In reading the document, I've looked at the actions, and many of them, the action plan, many of them are short term or medium term. And then I go up above onto 537, page 537, talking about resource and funding. And I think we have, the local council has a council biodiversity grant of 15,000 available each year for community projects. But how's ADC going to fund these? It talks about grants from external agencies and things. How are we going to fund that? Do we have money set aside for that, and how much is that money? And if it's not, these things aren't going to happen, how are we going to update the action plan based on the funds available?
Thank you, and through the chair, the long-term draft plan has an allocation for all of the items in the schedule of this document, so they have already been accounted for. In terms of the third-party funding aspirations, that's purely aspirational, and we would be a willing party in supporting any applications that were for third-party funding to achieve the outcomes and the goals of this strategy.
Okay, so to summarise, we have the financial resources allocated in the long-term plan.
That is correct,
for the
yes.
actions, and the personnel and the staff, and that's okay as well.
That is correct, yes.
Because there's a lot of...
Page 516.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's also around my question, is it says in that resourcing and funding, it it's within existing council operations or budgets. And then on page 516, under financial, it's got year 1, 30,500, year 2, 45. So that is dollars are already in the long-term plan budget.
That is correct.
Yeah, so there's no additional, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Love.
I will just go back to the question I asked before about this as a living document. So if we pass it today, we can adapt and make these changes as the government gives their direction on things. No, because I'd have to say we've spent years getting to this stage. We've got so many groups out there that have come on board with the catchment groups and everything, all working together slowly on this progress. And I'd hate to see it stopped, because they'd be very disappointed, and that's why I was asking this is a living document that we can change government policies as we go along.
Yes, through the chair, that's correct. It is, and it will be having ongoing iterations of update as and when required. And we can only, as we've already discussed, we've written the original document on what we knew at the time. There's subsequently in the last number of months been some changes and signalling from central government, and it's fair to say that over time that will continue, and we just need to continue to amend and adopt the changes that we're sent down and the messaging that we're sent down from the government as and when that arrives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, speakers? I'm just going to get Hamish to just see if we can get that change made over afternoon tea, then bring it back after afternoon tea if we get it right, and then adopt the strategy then if we can get it done in that time. So just checking. So we might just park it just for the moment. Thank you. And we'll welcome Bill Thomas from the Water Zone Committee. Welcome, Bill. And please come forward. And you have a presentation for us, I understand? But need any help to get it underway, or
have they? Is it not circulated?
Oh, yep. We we have got it circulated.
I got chatting.
It's on. I've got the statement.
No, we've got it on the screens.
Yep. You've got it.
Oh, good afternoon, councillors. So I presume you haven't seen this, and this is the first time.
No, we've got a. I'm just looking to see if it's the same.
It should be the same one, yeah.
Yeah. Slightly different, but probably the same theme. Yeah.
So well, do we take it as read?
You can do, yeah.
And I'll just go through the headlines, and if anyone's got a question, you can bring it up, and then we can just have a wee talk about the future if that suits the mayor.
Perfect.
So the annual progress, so the progress report highlights they're there. And then there's a new Runanga representative, because it's interesting trying to engage, so it's quite encouraging they've appointed a new representative, Jess Hobbs. Then we've had group presentations that have come to us. And then the Ashburton Water Zone Committee has heard from, these are the organisations that have reported to us, which is, you can see them there. And then the action plan review, we can talk about that a bit, but we do have a ZIP, and which runs for 3 years, and then we review it, and so we've been through that, just taking a few things off it that we don't think are achievable or probably what the community wants, and we've discussed that, so there's a few minor changes there we can discuss. And then the budget, which is basically a budget for biodiversity, because that's the only funds. And then we just have the recommendation for the lake, Ashburton Lakes, and what's happening up there. And then our biodiversity, normally we've just been doing that as they come up, but the strategy this year was to let them all amalgamate and deal with them all at one, which will be at the March meeting. So I understand it's about 4 or 5 applications, which won't use all the money that's allocated, but we'll deal with those ones as we come across them. Yeah, the committee review, which I presume the council are all aware of, so that's being, it says led by ECAN, might be led by ADC possibly, but we've had a bit of a workshop and I've been interviewed by your staff here, and I think other zone committee meetings have been, and then the next few months there's a few workshops, Hines River Report and Sil Maihora. We're just trying to work with the other zone committees to see what's going on there. So that's a basic rundown of what's happened during the year. If there's any questions about any of those projects.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I see the Rakaia bus trip up there. So whereabouts on the Rakaia are you looking at, and for what the purpose of that trip?
Well, the bus trip's work in progress, but it's basically there's an enhancement going up on the Rakaia River. There's a group that are doing some work on it, so it's really just going to see what they're doing and try and get involved, because I'm not sure about Ashburton District Council, but as a zone committee we really haven't been involved very much, so we'd like to see if it's an area we should be or what they're actually doing.
Thank you, because it's a river that I keep getting told is big enough to look after itself, and I can assure you it is going backwards. Another one, you have biodiversity funding, but there's real problems out there with nitrates at the moment. Is there any consideration of a fund around assisting people who need to buy filters for nitrate problems for their household? It costs about $1,500 if you want to put just a standard underbench nitrate filter in your house. And I would have thought water safety quality would be as important now as biodiversity is. And yeah, for some people that may be a struggle.
Well, we actually don't have a budget. So we just can fund groups. We fund some testing kits that various land users can use to see what the nitrate levels are on productive land, but we don't have a budget to do what you suggest.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. I'm just reading your report, and you've got from the 1st of July 23, affected consent holders must stop taking water when the flow in the Ashburton River at State Highway 1 bridge is less than 6 cubics. How did that come? I mean, I've read the rationale, keep more water in the river. How did that come about? And what have you seen any benefits from doing that, please?
Well, you certainly know the right question to ask. How did it come about? Well, it was apparently it was a figure that no one's really owning up to. But the Ashburton Zone Committee was asked to implement the plan with ECAN, and it's caused a lot of disharmony at the moment, because there's some people who had water who now have got none. There's other people that have been drastically cut back. We haven't seen a huge improvement in the river, any changes, and yet the irrigation sort of probably halved, and some people have had no water at all. It's an interesting one, because there's an Ashburton group on Green Street now, a community group that just met over the last few days, and they're talking about the biodiversity that has been lost in the small streams, because the Green Street irrigation scheme used to top up the creeks, and now they're not, so there's some natural biodiversity that's suffering. So yeah, we've talked to ECAN about trying to get them to say, where do you think that project, from everything, all the consulting that happened, where we are today, where did you think we'd be today when you did it, when you implemented the plan?
Yes.
But they're having difficulty answering that, so we haven't heard back.
So next steps for the group is repeating the question and waiting to get a response. Is that?
Yeah, and they've told us that they will by April.
Okay.
So that'll be the April meeting.
So that's the report that was asked for, what we want, what ECAN wanted to achieve with the Ashburton River, and now it's been implemented, what actually did happen. That's reports due in April, is it? Is that what you said? Yeah, good. Would be good to see did the science actually happen. Yeah. Councillor Lovett.
Sticking with the river system, we know there's a lot of gravel that's come down the river, and you've cut back to 6 cubics. Is there any measuring under the, and going through the strategy, all the stones, what water flow's going through there? Because if it's filling up with stones, the water's still coming down, but is it in the river system but going through the gravel underneath. Has anyone looked at that? Because I know when we put the big sewage pipe through the river, they were busy pumping out, and there is a lot of water down there, so there could be the same amount of water, but it's below a bit like the Selwyn, how it runs.
I understand your question, but as far as my knowledge is, there's no test doing that.
And the other question around that too, we know there's been hundreds of trees being planted down the rivers. How much does one tree drink? If someone was asking me that the other week, all these trees are drinking water, so many litres per day. Is that making effect on the river?
Well, I think they will have an effect. There is a figure for that, but I'm not. Councillor Wilson might know, but I don't know off the top of my head. But it does have an effect. There's a whole lot of things that affect the use of water.
Yeah, they need to look at all that and not sort of blame, you know. Take
Well, I
the
think
blame off
the
farming.
horse has bolted a bit. Really, this plan is in place. The consent review was done. It's happened now, so I don't think ECAN's in a mind to wind anything back, even though they've got a fair bit of pressure put on them. But it is affecting, the community of Ashburton.
And the other question I had from someone up at Lake Camp, the batches now have all got holding tanks. What about the camping ground? What are they doing with all their water? They're all doing their dishes. Where's that water going? And they're sharing water and stuff. Is that going into the lake, or is there a big holding tank going to go in up there for the camping ground to try and clean that up?
I think that's probably ADC's area, not mine.
Yeah, it is, and we know the answer, and it's Jane who knows the answer. I think we're just not here.
Okay.
We can ask her when she comes back. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Hi, Bill. I've had a bit to do with Ange and the Catchment Collective. I see you're supportive of them and their growth. Is ECAN also supportive and backing them? And
Councillor Hooper, yes, I think ECAN are very supportive, and the catchment groups have been a great way to get communities together. And the exciting thing about them is that the younger generation of people are getting involved, which is really good. So they're good things.
It's Councillor Wilson. Yep. I'm a zonal committee member as well, just so everybody understands. But the catchment, the Carter's Creek / Lakewood / drainage problem, it is ECAN's problem. But what's the zonal committee? How's it involved in that discussion? Because obviously the district council is not responsible for it, but they're the people of Ashburton. So we feel, not responsible, but we feel a duty to push the case forward. How is the zonal committee helping that?
Well, we've had a deputisation of some community group members who came along and presented and actually wrote to the zone committee after the flooding. And so we listened to them, and we then wrote a letter to ECAN asking them to what they were going to do about the flooding, because it was agreed that it was in their area of expertise. And so they've been put in touch with them. So every community member that talks to us, we talk to ECAN about it, and ADC's sort of in the loop through yourself and the Mayor, and the areas of responsibility of where they are. But so any complaints we get or communications, we try and pass on to the right organisation. So we have been talking to ECAN about it, and they understand. But like everyone, it's all budgets. And
perhaps, Bill, could you perhaps just expand a wee bit, just so everybody understands that the zonal committee, it's a joint committee between ECAN and District Council, so it's the one committee that, expand on that a wee bit. That
I haven't actually got the formal wording of it here, but it's a joint committee between the Ashburton District Council and ECAN. I think ECAN supply secretarial services and some of those things. I'm not exactly sure what ADC input is, but they're joint members of it. They're the bosses. So we're just really a committee of the ECAN and ADC. We can make recommendations, but we have no power. It all rests with you guys. And as you know, it's going through review at the moment, which is a good thing, because I think all these things need to be reviewed. I've got a couple of personal comments to make about that when we get a chance, just at the end. But it's just a joint committee, and we try and report yearly to the council, and having two councillors on the committee, if there's any big issues, that you would obviously bring them up to the council.
Perhaps I can just add to Bill's response there. I think he's described it well. It is a joint committee, but it is ECAN-led. The resources that goes to the committee and the administrative support and the information that flows to it is largely driven by ECAN. And there are, the Mayor has previously reflected on wondering about zone committees in the future, and we are currently in the process of a review which will come to you next month. ECAN are also conducting a review, but not so much about Ashburton, but more broadly the zone committee system across the Canterbury region, and no doubt those things will come before council when they're both resolved.
Councillor Huber?
Thank you. A towny question, Bill. The footage of that Green Street stream or creek where the fish are dying and the guys in there with buckets and things like that, is that what you were talking about earlier with you're not going to get answers until April? So what happens to the biodiversity? It just dies, or the stuff that can't be chucked in buckets and put somewhere else?
Well, unfortunately, it does just die. And, you know, you've got DOC and these other agencies that should be concerned about this sort of thing because they're driving about biodiversity and how important it is. And here's a classic example when no one's doing it except for the locals who probably, I don't know if we're in committee or not, so I won't say too much, but I mean, they will just die if no one does anything about it.
Disappointing.
I would point out the locals are.
Local people for local solutions. Yeah, but being held up in red tape, I presume, and biodiversity is sensitive, and yeah, it'll be dead by the time they make a decision. The people who have the power to make a decision, the critters and fishes in those that creek will be dead. Yeah, is that what we want? I don't think so, but that's what's going to happen because of bureaucracy. Anyway, Bill, you got more to?
Well, just quickly, I just wanted to talk about the review which is taking place, which needs to be done just to probably, if nothing else, sort of refocus the committee if they decide to keep them. I think the one thing I probably should have said, and Hamish mentioned it, but there are committees for every area in Canterbury, so Ashburton's seen as one of the better ones because it gets things done a bit. Hurnui haven't got one at all, they're dysfunctional. I think there's Waihora's got a good one. There's one down in Waimate and things. So they are a good way. I think the biggest thing you have to watch is accountability. Who's going to keep ECAN accountable if you don't have a zone committee? And it might be a different way you structure a zone committee, or you might be a committee of the councillors themselves. But we've had a few little community groups that feel that it's easy to access us, and they might say, well, why are the fish dying, or why is the septic tanks not working? Why are we getting flooded? And what's ECAN doing about it? And if they go into the big ECAN, they probably don't get much traction. But at least if they talk to the zone committee, which is local committee members, they can then represent those people on behalf of the councils and follow up and get them in touch with the right people. So when they've got a complaint, it's heard. And we've seen that with Carter's Creek. We're seeing it with Green Street just happening now. And actually, it's following on from Green Street, who had a correspondence they had, but they were talking to the biosecurity person for New Zealand, the biodiversity group, and her comment was, have they attended the Ashburton Zone Water Committee meeting? These meetings are a public forum and will have the right people in the room, and this is the meeting in March. So it's even some of these advisory groups are telling people to go there. So when you're considering what you do about the zone committee, the big question be, what would you do to keep accountability? And there are ways you can do it with smaller groups or whatever, but that's probably its biggest role, I think.
Thanks, Bill. Jane's back now. Jane, we had a question before, and it was around the Lake Camp, Clearwater, the camping ground there. When they wash their dishes and go to the toilet, where does that end up? Because the houses have now got holding tanks. What happens in the camping ground?
In the camping ground, there isn't a kitchen. There's only the toilet facilities. So to ground would be the answer. Not all of the batches have holding tanks. Some of them can't have holding tanks. There's not enough room on the site, or the water table's too high. They're using camp toilets, which they empty into the campground toilets.
Councillor Lovett is happy with the answers. That is what happens. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. We're going to break for afternoon tea about 3 o'clock or just about then, so more than welcome to stay and join us for a cup of tea and a chat. Perfect. May have a biscuit too. Council, we'll move on to item number 10, which is the Stockwater closure, Ashburton River Road. Chris Neal, Sol O'Neill. Is it back? Have we got the wording for the biodiversity? We can go back to that. We have. Okay, we'll go back to biodiversity, item number 9. We're not far away from the Stockwater, Neil.
Thank you, through the chair. So what we've gone into the draft document, and so we're showing it to you just on the screen just to show you where the track changes are coming in the action plan, under goal 1, under 1.1a, we are proposing to change that. So it says undertake assessment of the district's ecological values, and we've removed all reference to the SNAs. In 1.1e, we are saying that we will consider, where appropriate, plan changes to protect sites of ecological value, removing SNA, and that will continue to recognise land covenants. So this would be where someone perhaps has purchased a farm and said, actually, this part of my farm is perfect and pristine and we want to start putting some protection in. That's when they can come to council and start having those conversations. It's not council going out and leading those conversations. And the final changes in the glossary. Sorry, bear with me. And we're just proposing that we remove all reference to significant natural areas. We'll just remove the definition altogether because we don't have any reference to SNA in the rest of the document. And then whatever may come out of the central government's work over the next 12 months, when we do the 12-month review, if there's anything that we need to put back in, we could do so at that stage.
We're happy with those changes. There's now a recommendation in front of it, unless you want to talk to it. There's a recommendation in front of us. No more questions?
No.
Councillor Lovett, you moving?
I'd like to move. Yeah.
Seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor McMillan?
Yes, I'll second, thank you.
Do you speak to the motion?
I think I've spoken before. I've been involved with the biodiversity over the last 2 terms of council and just seen this grow as a body, and we've got industry on board and lots of farming people, you know, and all their catchment groups and everything, and I think we just got to quietly keep going, and we're doing some great stuff out there, and I don't want to see any stop to it. I think it's a brilliant space to be in. It's converted me, and yeah, it's well done.
Thanks, Lynette. Further speakers for or against? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I'll speak for the strategy. I think we have to always realise that the biggest advocates of biodiversity are normally the landowners, and they're often the quietest about it, and they don't actually cost the council any money because they normally fund it themselves. So I think we always want to remember that in the background, that they are the quietest, the biggest funders, and probably the biggest advocates.
Thank you. No more further speakers for or against? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. We might move over to get one more item done before afternoon tea. Item number 10, Stockwater closure, Ashburton River Road. Welcome, Chrissy and Neil. Thanks for that strategy. Well done. Anything further to add, Chrissy, to your report?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay. Questions, councillors? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I'm just trying to find the plate. Just wondering why the closure is effective from September. Is there a reason why it's so sort of far out?
Through the chair, yes, because one of the properties still needs to put some infrastructure on, and Ashburton Lyndhurst are investigating that at present.
Councillor Wilson.
It's page number 555. Number 6, the closure consent conditions will suggest the race drains culverts do not get filled in and be retained for stormwater purposes. Are they currently any natural waterways, the current stock, natural waterways? What I'm getting at there is, there's a stream. If you've got a spring with a stream, well, that needs to stay open because you've got a natural spring that'll come up and go down. But if these are being cut and they're not actually natural waterways, and all they're there, when we talk about stormwater, all we're going to do is shift the stormwater from one person's farm to another. That shouldn't continue because you're supposed to retain your own runoff from your property. But if it's a natural waterway, that's quite a different scenario. So are these natural waterways, or are they just...
Through the chair, these are all, I guess they could be termed natural now because they've been around for over 100 years. It's, I'm not too sure, to be perfectly honest, what the answer is for that, Neil.
Yeah, where they are natural and clearly a natural low point in that area, we do encourage that they don't fill them in, and I think it's for their benefit as well to control the stormwater. We can't insist, we can only encourage.
Because we have instances in the district where we've closed them and some people have shut them and it's caused the water to flow to an area that never had water, so we're just sort of shifting it down the roads. That's what I'm perhaps getting at. So we don't want to insist.
Yeah, we try and work with them and explain the consequences of that, and generally we do make good progress with that.
And just the way I read the report, Councillor, there's some clearly some potential impact on our roading, and one of the reasons for asking the landowners to perhaps leave the ditch there is to assist the drainage and around the roading asset. So while we can't insist, we think there is still advantages in leaving the ditch physically there.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through the chair, can you just remind me what our policy says about the percentage of properties that support the closure versus properties that don't support? I see there's 4 properties, 3 against. I thought we needed a bigger margin than that for some reason.
So through the chair, the matrix that we have does, it depends on the number of properties involved, the percentage, the length and all that sort of stuff. So I work through the matrix and whether it's a low, moderate or high significance. But generally when we have, like for instance, this one where we've got 4 and 3 against, it's reasonably close, and it's one of those more difficult ones where normally Mr. McCann can approve the ones where everyone is fully 100% and it's not a problem. Whereas if you go through our matrix, when we start to have more that are against it, then it steps up slightly, and then it comes to council.
That last bit is the key point. It's come to council because there is opposition, and then we seek council's wisdom to make the decision. Yeah.
Just before I go to council, I also have a question on page 564. There's a map there of the non-consenting properties. And if I read it right, there's the water race with the dotted red line on. That's the one you're proposing to close.
Correct.
There's one at the to the left of those properties, a little blue line. That's another water race, is it?
Correct.
Yeah. So all of those properties that oppose have water at the other end of the farm, so to speak.
At this stage, yes, unless someone applies to close that race.
Yeah. At this stage, they have access at the back. May not be convenient, but they would have it at the back or the front of their property, whichever they would call it.
That's correct.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
It's along the same lines as that. On that same map, what are the yellow dots?
There are existing soak holes that for where the race finishes.
Councillor Mackle.
Thank you. Just on those culverts that are suggested to be left open under the road, obviously there's going to be a short drain in the berm. What is council's responsibility to maintaining that if they are left open, and what would be the repercussions of a car accident in those drains, or if those drains were in the, a car hit them, what would be council's responsibility then for a significant impact on the damage of a vehicle or be it persons?
I think it's just the same as all culverts on our roading network. We are responsible for making sure they're as safe as can be, and they are clearly visible. That's all I can say. It'll be treated just the same as any other culvert going forward. We'll still have the culvert there under the road, so it'll just be treated very much like all our other culverts.
Yeah, and you were saying before they're all on low-lying areas, these culverts. Some
Yes.
of the water races aren't. So are these been identified as they are all are low-lying?
If they are low-lying, we will definitely be keeping the culverts there and maintaining them just along with all the others. Yep.
No further questions. Thank you. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Thanks, Chrissy. Neil. Councillor Wilson moved. Seconded. Councillor Brown. Open for debate. Councillor Cameron.
When I read the stop water race pot closure policy a year or two ago, I thought it said basically that if people want to use the stop water race for watering of stock, unless there's an easy alternative, they can, it has to stay open. And I read one person who doesn't want their race to close because in case there's an electricity outage or something, he's got 600 cows, he or she wants to make sure get water, access to water. They can go to the Ashburton Lyndhurst, is that right? How do they access the Ashburton Lyndhurst? Well, that's a question, but is that accessible with extra cost? Or does
I think in
anybody
the
want to
report
take
it says that it's going past the gate. They irrigate.
Yeah, but do they have to pay for that? Or?
Of course you pay for it. Nothing's free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and if just on the electricity, I read in there that they talk about no electricity, but if they've got 600 cows and the power's out, how are they going to milk
how are
the
they
cows?
going to milk them? I know, I thought that.
Water's an
Yeah.
issue, milking their cows. I suggest they would probably have a backup generator.
And they might have a generator, yeah.
If not, they should have.
Mm.
Recommended by the dairy companies that they do for that. If there's no debate, thanks Councillor Hooper for early departure. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll break now for a cup of,
There is another stop water closure report.
Right, we'll do one more then. Yep, we're working as hard. Item number 11, number 12. Page 555. Item 11, yeah. Yeah, on page 565. There we go. Question, anything further to add?
No.
Questions, councillors?
It's to do with property 2350, which I understand that's an Ashburton District Council block. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we'd be in favour of closing that, wouldn't we? Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. I see it's leased, but we would be always in favour of closing it because it would follow our policy, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Just a question on page 568. It talks about the connection to the Chertsey water supply and the pipeline cannot be installed across any other neighbouring properties, therefore being installed and drilled along the verge of State Highway 1 is the only option. Go down to connection to the BCI irrigation scheme. And the comment there is, would require the owner to obtain water from BCI and gain land access and easements across neighbouring properties. You can easements across BCI, but you can't for council water scheme. Is that sensible?
Through the chair, the assets manager has advised that because it's a public water, it's a pipeline from a public water source, it cannot go across private land. Hence, the Chertsey water supply pipeline cannot go across private land. It must be across public land to connect to the property boundary.
Even with an easement?
That is my understanding.
Unless council decides otherwise, I presume.
Yeah, perhaps we could, yeah, I'm sure we could get an easement if absolutely required.
If there's two options there now for that one property, I think. One is a BCI, one is a council Chertsey water scheme. If one was more economical than the other, or one was more cost prohibitive than the other.
We could consider that.
Yeah, so it is up for consideration.
Yep.
It would be up for consideration.
Yep.
Yeah, but may require easements. Yep. Thank you. Other questions, councillors? There's a recommendation there. Someone like to move?
Sorry, I have more question. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wilson.
On page 567, the property that says they can only, the property is metered and is recording as allowance of 1 cubic metre per day. Is that a, you know, because obviously can they purchase water, extra water?
Through the chair, Chertsey Water is the allocation per day for properties who are connected to the Chertsey water supply, as 1 cubic metre per day. They can put it into a tank and store it. So they don't necessarily.
It's limited to that, so they can't take any more than that.
Correct.
So physically they can't take any more.
No, I believe it would have an orifice to reduce it so that it's the maximum. Or restrictor, I mean.
The recommendation on page 565, the mover. Councillor Lovett, second it. Councillor Ellis. Open for debate. Thank you, Chris O'Neill. Being no debate, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Now we'll stop for a cup of tea. Welcome to join us. Adjourn the meeting for morning tea and hit the button. Oh, someone's done that at the back, have they? grassroots sprints. Welcome, Mark. Gabby? No, Mark Neal. Question, anything for Dad, Mark? It's
No, nothing to add.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I believe this is a different date to the date they normally run this at, which has been for a very long time. And I'm just hoping everyone realised that when they put in for their road closure thing. Is it correct that it is a different date?
I'm not sure. It's normally part of the Wheels Week.
Yes.
So, and it's not this time.
No, I think the date has changed for some reason, and it just makes me worried that people haven't picked up on that and are expecting, when they saw the notice, oh yeah, same date, but I believe it's different.
Oh, yeah, there's been no objections. So.
No.
Right, okay. I was talking to the Mayor of Christchurch the other day, and he's actually coming down to a race in it. He was not sure it's a hydrogen car, but it's a car, whatever he has. So he was looking forward to coming down to it. Councillor,
just to clarify through you, Mr. Mayor, last year it was the weekend of the Friday the 12th and the 13th of April. Oh, no, of May, I beg your pardon, I'm looking at the wrong month here, May.
Yeah. So this is just the day after Anzac Day, 26th of April onwards, yeah. That's good. There's a recommendation there. So, someone like to move? Councillor Ellis?
Yes.
Councillor Cameron? Open for debate. Thanks, Neil. Mark. Being no debate, unless Jane wants to talk. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. This is a very well organised event, brings a lot of people to town, as we've just heard. The Mayor of Christchurch is coming. A lot of them need somewhere to stay, and there's quite a bit of money spent in the town, so yeah, I just wish them all the best with the event.
No further speakers for again. Oh, Councillor Wilson. No, Mackle, sorry.
Thank you. Just as support with the Ashburton Car Club, as a suggestion, I have stock car experience. I'm just wondering if I can borrow the mural car that weekend.
It's going to be busy that weekend, but the Chief Executive's car is available. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Gets carried. Thank you. Or you could use a pool car. Item number 13 is the Mayor's report. Any questions for the Mayor's report? I'll move that we receive the Mayor's report. Second it. Councillor Cameron. Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Nothing to discuss. Thank you. That takes us, we've had Bill Thomas. There's no extraordinary business, so that concludes the open meeting. So a recommendation that we move into committee. Councillor Ellis. Councillor McMillan. All in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Thanks, John.